Great. Okay. Okay. Okay, so as I noted, I'm going to now finish up our discussion of some aspects of study design. We're going to come back to this issue of study on a few different perspectives, particularly of study budgeting in a later lecture. But for much of the afternoon, I really wanted to get you to have a chance to work on your exercises, your projects, I should say. So we've been talking about participant motivations and compensation. For low SES populations, we have some particular needs that apply. These include a possible need for access to smartphones. And I noted that for some low SES population members, we'll have situations where their own smartphones are too full to do installations or for data storage. And you want to check that if possible at time of enrollment, or ask them to check ahead of time how much free space that they have. We have thought about distributing an app which they would download and check whether their phone is suitable for use with the study, so that they could sort of take that as an element of eligibility. But that hasn't happened at this point. There's also an issue of data plans. Think about a homeless person may not have a data plan. They may have a calling plan, but not a data plan. And to prevent that from being a problem for timely data access, if you don't want to rely on Wi-Fi, you may consider paying data plans. We've done that before for some of our low SES very successfully, or somewhat successfully. The complications there are there's really two bad options. Either you go with their existing carrier, or you go with one carrier of your choosing. Now, here in Australia, do you have many carriers?
Yeah.
Competing for the consumer marketplace? Okay. Sorry?
Not many. 3, 4.
A few. So
Maybe 5.
5, yeah. So the challenge here that we've found is that if they already have a plan with a certain carrier, there's a temptation to say, okay, we'll just top them up. We'll just bump them up in terms of the plan that they have. So maybe they have a plan now for 500 megabytes per month, and you bump them up to a 2 gigabyte per month plan for data access, figuring that's way more than enough than to be required for Ethica. Just think Ethica, roughly speaking, I think it may be 500 megs per month or something like that, but Mohammed could fill you in for different data sources. It may be 1 gig per month, but in any case, you may top them up with their existing provider. The challenge here is that different providers have different plans. And it may be that one provider has a plan allowing you to go to 1 gigabyte per month to 5, where another one requires you to go from 500 to 3 as the next gradation. You can get caught up in a lot of specifics there. Alternatively, you can just say, okay, we'll go with a single provider, but that often forces them to switch carriers because they have a calling plan with your other provider. And maybe they'll retain their phone number, but often they don't want to switch providers. And in the terms of their existing phone might be linked to their provider, because sometimes you get contracts which tie you in with that provider. So it can get quite complicated, this issue of getting people enrolled while trying to pay their data plans. Mohammed, do you remember the estimated, for a sort of study which has quite a few sensors and so on, let's say like DFCI, what's the rough amount of data uploads per month expected from a participant? If everything goes over cell data channel, which is a big assumption that they're not using Wi-Fi at all. What are we talking about? Sorry?
800 megabytes.
800 megabytes per month.
That's not much, is it? I'm really bad with this stuff.
Well,
It's not much at all.
But 800 meg is not much.
Assuming that they respond
But that's
to
just for that show.
That is quite a bit for someone.
no,
who's
assuming they
got
respond to
That is
five
actually-
images,
Yeah.
image surveys a day.
Yeah.
If you've got a,
That's
only
quite
got
a lot
like
for
one or
someone
two
who's got a
gig.
prepaid phone. That's
Yeah.
quite a lot. That's
Yeah.
not insubstantial. That's-
Well, but again, if you remember when I went through those numbers, when I was talking about data sources, they are not evenly distributed. Something like, for example, motion sensors, which are raw sensor data, you get 6 million records per participant per week, while something like pedometer, which serves mostly the same purpose, you get 2,000 per participant per week. So assuming that you have all the sensors, yes, it will be 800, but there are two substantial factors there. Like one is the surveys they respond, how many images, how many audio files they upload. This assumption was, this number was based on the assumption that they upload around 4 or 5 audio and images per day, which we can say it's higher, like a higher bound. And the other thing is that assuming that we have all those motion sensors enabled, the motion sensors collectively have 85% of the size of all the sensor data uploaded. So if you decide to cross that and go with pedometer, for example, and say, well, I don't want all those raw sensor data, I'm not going to analyze them, just number of steps taken, and that estimate of the type of activity they're engaged in is good enough for me, that cuts that by 80%. So it's not evenly distributed.
and data from questionnaires, other than audio and sort of the images, is very small.
Yeah,
it's
responses,
almost
yeah.
insignificant.
Yes, your responses
Infinitesimal.
is very small because it's just normal
Text, yeah.
text, and so it takes very little space. What takes space in survey responses is image and audio. So if they capture an image, each image is like 2 megabytes on average. If they record their audio, each audio, depending on how long they talk, I think someone mentioned that what if they just record their audio for, I remember this conversation came up yesterday, someone mentioned that what if they want to respond to 2-hour audio? Sure, they can, but that will be like 500 megabytes of upload, so if they're okay with that, they can do it.
Because it can be quite expensive here. So a lot of lower SES people will have a prepaid phone where they
Yeah.
just have it and they'll top it up.
Yeah.
But if that's because for a postpaid you need a certain credit rating to be able to have a postpaid plan. But if you had a postpaid plan and then you went over by say 200 or 300 megabytes,
Yeah.
it's really expensive. It's like 10 or 15 cents
Exactly.
a megabyte. I mean, it's quite expensive.
Yes,
to
yes.
go over.
So that's
We'd be having them only doing on Wi-Fi though, wouldn't we? So isn't it their
Exactly.
home Wi-Fi that they're paying
If-
for? Isn't it their home data?
So-
Or
A lot of-
wherever they are when they're on Wi-Fi. But if we
Yeah.
only download when they're accessing Wi-Fi, it's whoever's paying for that Wi-Fi that the cost is.
If they have
may not
access.
be within Wi-Fi, like it's not like.
So you're
I mean, if you're medium or higher CS, you've got a Wi-Fi network at home, but that still comes off your home plan. It's
Yes,
not like this.
that's what I'm saying.
But I mean, if they're looking for Wi-Fi, like going to McDonald's or something like that to get
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, I mean, they're not going to have a lot of Wi-Fi access.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because it's very different in North America, where Wi-Fi can take a large fraction of the data off the cell data network, but it may not be like that here.
So here it probably
Yeah.
would be more like that within Sydney City.
Oh yeah.
And some of the more
Mm.
populated suburbs, but a lot
Mm.
of the lower SES people in Sydney, for example, live out in the west in a suburban
Mhm.
areas,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of Wi-Fi places to go to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you're in the middle classes, and
Yeah.
Sydney, I think at home, most people would have Wi-Fi. Would be.
But then it's
Yeah, but it's off
costing
your
them.
home plan though. It's
Yeah.
not
Oh
like
yeah,
it's
but
costing
it's a lot cheaper than cell data.
So home plans for Wi-Fi. I mean, home plans for it's basically your home internet plan, right?
Yeah.
And that I would imagine that would have an extremely high sort of
Yeah.
Monthly
Yeah,
allocation.
because
Terabytes.
yeah.
Terabytes, yeah. So it would probably.
That Netflix
What's
makes
paying you
that's
on?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah, but for like the ones that feel,
We never come near it, so.
The good thing I can see out of this is that you could put into your ethics that you need to give them a financial remuneration for the cost that it might be taking off their home plan. So that's another incentive for them to study.
It's-
Mum and Dad are actually paying for
it's-
that, but they're going to get it.
It's,
How do you do it actually? Because it could end up quite expensive.
it could be expensive, and that's a monthly charge. So it's not, I mean, for the studies where we've done this in the past, and this used to be a big model 4 or 5 years ago. This was a big model where we would pay data plans, and it would be per month planned. And Kurt's been involved in a number of these studies more recently. You know, it was a particularly attractive thing, right? Because they get a data plan, they get a good, strong data plan, but it costs. And you know, people think about phone cost as a big cost, you know, providing the phones, but that ends up being dwarfed by the monthly cost after, you know, 6 months or 3/4 of a year. The cost per month it starts to be dominating. So this is it's a significant issue, and it's a bit of a complex issue. One other thing that we proposed for a study, it was a study proposed to NIH, and it was a very complex study involving agent-based modeling and so on. It turns out it was not successful, but one of the things we planned there is the individuals who are part of it, the participants, being from a rural, predominantly low SES population, when they came, they would come in once a month anyway to visit a clinic as part of the study. And they would talk to a dietitian, I think, at that time and so on. And we would have a means there of connecting them online. So just while they're in the clinic, the data can just be streamed out. It's just being streamed out of their phone. And they don't even necessarily have to be aware of it. I mean, it gets sucked out and gets sent over to the server. And you know, if there is some way of providing the study population with recurrent Wi-Fi access, you might be able to do so for much cheaper than paying a data plan on a per person basis, because they just circulate, you know, frequently enough in this area.
So this is probably a silly question, but with the data, once it's uploaded, it's deleted off the phone. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, it's deleted off the phone, and what that means is it doesn't accumulate,
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
beyond a certain point. Yeah. Do you want
I want
this?
to show one graph here
Okay.
that I think will be relevant to this discussion.
Yeah, sure. Let me just stop recording because this is tied with the presentation, the video.